My bad, family. I wasn't trying to make you hear all that. All right, let me get my life together. Boom, boom, family. Glad to be back with you with another episode of Swami Live. I hope you've been having a fantastic week since the last time we are together. Hope you've been moving and grooving, doing your thing. Uh-oh, what is this? Wait a minute. Your microphone is unmuted but has no signal. Let me see. Oh no, I know. I just heard myself talking, so I gotta make sure my notifications ain't tripping. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so again, glad to be back with you, family. Hope you've been having a fantastic week since the last time we were together. If you are new here, this is Soul Swami Live, in which we discuss all things healing in various formats, whether it be through homework, prompts, discussions, whether it be through videos, conversations, and even live energy readings. So if you're on here and you would like an energy reading, hit that link in the description and don't hesitate to join the live so we can read your energy. You can catch us every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Tuesday night is focused all on healing, and Thursday night is a spinoff of our Tuesday night show, which is a book club. And it was in an attempt for us to be able to reconnect with the child in us by allowing someone to read to us, right? What kid don't love being read to? And you can catch us on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook for sure. We brought Instagram back this time. Instagram be acting funny a lot, so I don't know. We just gonna see how that goes, cause I don't know. Instagram can be interesting at times, very very interesting. So, like I said, we're giving it another try. But for sure, you can catch us on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. Beginning of every show, we generally do some sort of energy cleansing or some energy work, and this week we are on the heart chakra. The color for your heart is green, hence the green tint to some of the lighting. So if you want to do some heart work, you want to start thinking about eating some green stuff, wearing some green stuff, or if you're into light therapy, use green lights. Your heart is good for your love, your compassion, your empathy, your kindness, and your feelings of acceptance, right? Which are very huge and very important to most of us. We all want to be seen and we all want to be accepted for what is seen, right? The element for your heart is air, one of my favorite elements. I think a lot of messages through the air, whether it be the winds of change or conversation, the breath of life, you dig? If you are into crystals, you want to think green stones, and there's some other things that are not necessarily green, but green to help you. You want to think emerald, jade, excuse me, not Jane. Jane must be talking about me. God bless her. Jade, green calcite, and rose quartz. Rose quartz is one of my favorite. I even got it in the shape of a heart to remind me it is a heart stone. If you are into essential oils, you want to think about things like rose. You want to consider jasmine. Geranium is good. Flower scents, which is interesting. You want to think about stuff like that. So after we discuss what the chakra is, we generally do some sound bowl, a little sound therapy. So for this moment, we will use our small singing bowl and kind of let it set the vibe or the mood for us for a second. visualization. Excuse me. For our breathing exercise, we will do 4, 7, 8. If you are new here, all you gotta do is just listen to the count and focus on your breathing. But it is a inhale for 4 seconds. You hold your breath for 7, and then we release for 8. With our heart work, making sure we understand and control the element of our heart, which is air. So making sure that we have control over the air that resides inside of us. So on the count of 3, we will start. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last time. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, cool. Give me a second. I'm trying to record, and there's no more space. Oh my, what's the name? That's bananas. I know what it is, all them darn. We got a lot of old videos. So I knew it was going to be soon that we needed to adjust this. But I definitely need to be able to record for a little bit. Alright, so next we are going to do our affirmations. Generally do a visualization with this at the same time, but since we are working on our air, we'll be doing what we've been doing the last couple of weeks. We'll take a breath and then say the affirmation, and take a breath and say the affirmation, and so forth. So I want you to take a deep breath Repeat after me. Breathe in. I love myself and others. Breathe in. I deserve to be loved. Breathe in. I forgive others easily. Breathe in. My heart is fully open, loving, and pure. Breathe in. I follow the voice of my heart. And release. Alright, family, we're going to get this party started. I need to make a little bit of space. Part of the problem is all these weirdo. Let me see what we got here. I got this feature set up where it makes automatic replays. And listen, it makes like 500 replays of starting soon and not the actual show. Oh, shit. Which is wild. I definitely think it's about time for us to have another energy reading. It's been a while. It's been a while since you've been gone. Let's see what this do. Alright. We're going to continue our discussion of what we've been talking about. Generational curses. C. Cancel. Alright, there we go. We in business. So we record, so if I say something, highlight something that's worth a highlight, I can highlight it, family. So, we in business. I'm hot. Give me a second. So come back home. All right, we in business. So I can record a little bit and keep the party going. So we're gonna continue our discussion of oh no. My mama dogs have this Mr. Bill, I think that's the name of the character, an old character. Saturday Night Live or something like that, and every time the dog bites the character's stomach, he screams, "Oh no!" And that used to be the wildest thing to hear at 2:00 in the morning. The dog decides to start playing, and all you can hear is, "Oh no!" Which is wild. It was lit. So we're gonna continue our discussion on generational curses, so we can start identifying them instead of just talking about generational curses and how we're breaking them. We want to make sure we're putting names to these things so we can have a clear direction, and we can make sure we equip ourselves with the right tools to be able to identify our blessings and to break these generational curses, because it's going to take a little bit more than will and intention to actually be able to change the trajectory of some of our families, right? So before we start that, I got a couple of things I just kind of want to talk about. One has been kind of coming up over the last couple of weeks, right? And it's really about Get into a space. Part of this healing process is beginning to like yourself. Not necessarily beginning to, but reshaping your relationship with how you feel about yourself, right? And essentially, it is a reliking of self, right? Because some of the things that we've learned about ourselves or been told about ourselves or experience has conditioned us about ourselves no longer will represent us, or they wind up creating a dynamic where we don't like that about yourself. One of the main things that pop in my mind about this is I have a friend, right? It ties into this. I did a little work over the weekend, and one of the things that we talked about was being an emotional person and a sensitive person. And it's funny because it ties into another not another relationship, but another conversation I had, right? And when we talk about sensitive and emotional, we generally put a negative connotation on that, right? So a lot of people in their healing process, one of their intentions winds up becoming to not be so sensitive or to not be so emotional, right? But the thing about this healing process is you're not really changing yourself, right? You're accepting who you are and moving into alignment and moving through life in more of an authentic way, right? So one of the ways this shows up is I had a conversation with a friend tying into this idea of like myself and emotions and sensitive, right? So I'm a very emotional person. When I was a kid, I used to get in a lot of fights because it didn't take much for me to be triggered, right? And then I was one of those kids that would be in a fight and be crying the whole fight. Win, lose, or draw, it'd be straight tears the whole fight. Where I'd be so angry and so emotional and so sensitive about my life and the things I've been through. And you talk about my family and just so sensitive about everything, right? And with the best intentions, people, family dynamics, all that, they being sensitive and being emotional can be seen as a flaw, right? And as I was saying, a lot of people don't want that. So when having a conversation with this friend, they meant it for it to be a compliment, but it was an interesting perspective, right? Because we were talking about getting to a space where we don't care. We were like, I don't give up. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck, right? So this friend was saying to me that you really got that I don't care down packed. And after they said it, immediately after they said it, they was like, well, wait a minute. You do care, right? So now it seems as though there's this dynamic of care and don't care, right? But it's not that I don't care. It's that I learned to appreciate certain things about myself. So now I can navigate the world a little bit differently, right? So instead of going out here trying to be less caring, less sensitive, we accept those things about ourselves, right? And when we accept those things about ourselves, it changes how we navigate through the world, right? So I know I'm the kind of person that if I see it, I hear it, I know about it, I'm going to care, right? And not care in this way that I feel like I need to fix it, but I always care in the simple processing where now I have to think about it. I have to process my feelings, start thinking about perspectives, looking at other people's perspectives. And a lot of times, some of these things that I cared about weren't even mine to necessarily care about, right? So once we learn to like ourselves and love ourselves, we accept that we can be emotional people. We accept that we can be sensitive people. And now as we navigate life, we make sure that we use those skills for the things that impact our lives. For example, we've been talking about, there's been a lot of conversation around this guy, Charlie Kirk, right? So knowing me being a emotional and sensitive person, if I get involved with that, if I read what they're saying, if I hear the conversations, I'm going to care. It is going to matter to me. I'm not even one of those people who put on the illusion of not caring, but still talk about it. If you're talking about it, you care. If you feel the need to tell people you don't care, you care. If you're thinking about it, you care. So I recognize this about myself. So when it comes to these times or these places, whether it be something like Charlie Kirk or social media or family or homelessness or hunger or anything like that, progression of my people, anything like that, I now try to navigate and stay away from the things that don't align with who I am authentically, right? So I say all this. When you have your goals and your intentions, do not make your intentions or your goals of healing to be something that is counter to who you are. So if you are a sensitive and emotional person, you need to accept that so that you equip yourself with the tools to be able to navigate your emotions and others instead of suppress it, right? So you don't want to change those things about yourself. Appreciate that. One that a lot of people want to change is anger. It is okay to have anger. Anger is a natural emotion, as we talked about the difference between emotions and feelings. Anger is a natural emotion. It is there to protect you. Feelings are the stories we tell ourselves about that emotion. So we wind up creating this conflict between us being angry and some idea that once we're here, we won't experience anger anymore, or the anger no longer resides in us. It does. You will. So it's easier to accept these things about yourself. So then when the anger arises, you can pause and battle the anger with the right tools. Instead of denying that you are an angry person, and when anger comes up or when someone says you angered, now you're triggered, or you're lying. You're not being authentic with yourself and or others. So the main part of all this is for you to get to a space where you understand that the major part of this healing process is for you to like yourself. And not just like yourself, but begin to love yourself in ways you never had before. That means love the light version of you and love the shadow version of you. So over the last weeks, we covered this this week. I had intentions on trying to jump straight into the examples of generational curses, but I did some talking. So which I do every week. But if you were here last week, a couple of the generational curses that we did discuss were: one, limiting beliefs. That idea or that phrase or that statement when we say we don't do that. You hear that all the time. You hear it on social media. You very much hear it between races. One race saying this race does this and our race doesn't, which is a very limiting belief. Like last week, we used the example of school shooting, school violence. We have a group of people saying that it doesn't happen in our culture, and that's more of another person's culture. We'll say that black people will say that that's not in black culture. That's in white people culture. But school shootings are a part of the American culture. There are schools in black neighborhoods with metal detectors at the door because school shootings happen, right? So we want to make sure that we're not buying into these limiting beliefs, in which therefore we won't get ourselves the right tools to be able to address these issues. Poor health habits was the next one we talked about last week. It was your eating habits, your eating patterns, your thoughts and ideas on exercise, and how you view medical care, how you interact with medical doctors, how you view going to the doctor, your thoughts about medicine, science, and medical care as a whole. And the last one was emotional suppression, which is one of the things that we're working on with this healing process. We're getting to a space where we can feel the emotions. We are giving ourselves permission to feel the wide range of emotions. And as we explore those emotions, we are equipping ourselves with the right tools to shift feelings and emotions, right? Okay, so this week we are going to discuss first fear-based decision making. Fear-based decision making. A lot of times in our families, with fear-based decision making shows up in avoiding risk and challenges. One way we deal with that. So, in the best intentions, I'll never forget. This is truth. This is the truth. This is a perfect example of fear-based decision making. So I've supervised for a long time, right? And I remember I started this new job and I wanted to send many of my staff to Florida. Yep, they went to Tampa this year. And I wanted to send them to Tampa, right? I was sending teachers, administrators, all type of people to Tampa, right? But it was this one person I wanted to send to Tampa that everybody was so concerned about. I guess because she was a younger woman, whatever that means. She wasn't young. It's not like she was 20, 21. She was an adult. But she might have been one of the younger ones on the staff. And the people, since she's from this community, the people of the community felt it was their duty to be able to protect her, which is understanding. We want to have, a lot of times we wonder what happened to that community, that village. So when the village is still there, we can't get mad that the village is trying to village us, right? So when it comes time for me to send this one person to Tampa, an elder person in her life comes to me with concern. And they say to me, "Are you sure you really want to send her to Tampa?" That question right there is a setup for guilt. So I can tell some emotional manipulation is coming in. Because if I already said this person is going to Tampa, why wouldn't I be sure? So then they tell me, I don't know if that person should go because of human trafficking that will go on. So this person was advising me to make a fear-based decision. So this young lady could not get training, professional development, opportunity to go out of town just because of an older generation's fear-based thinking. And I told that person, do you know human trafficking is higher where we live than where she's going? She'd be safer from human trafficking where I'm sending her than where she currently lives right now. That is a perfect example of fear-based decision making. The advice with the best intentions that people give us will be fear-based. I remember when it was time to go to Milwaukee. Everybody was like, are you sure you want to do that? That's going to be so scary. All the advice and the information and the words that people gave, even their voice of encouragement, their words of encouragement were fear-based. That's the same thing that does not allow us to be able to let go of some of our traumas because we fear. the emptiness. There are people who no longer choose to date because they fear what may happen. They are functioning under a generational curse that they have not even opened their eyes to, and they are out in the world professing this fear-based decision making is the best decision making, right? But we don't want to do that because that fear-based decision making, one, makes us avoid risk and challenges. But risk is how we achieve, and challenges is how we succeed, right? You got to take risk to achieve some goals. You got to be challenged to experience success. And fear-based thinking is counterintuitive to all of that. The next thing that fear-based thinking winds up doing is have you living in this space of survival mode. Many of us are stuck in this space of survival mode because we don't know what thriving looks like. And because we functioned in this survival mode for so long, we think it is normal. I seen a post today where a person was asking, what would you be willing to sacrifice for forward progress of the people? And one of the things that showed up is, I can't lose my job. I can't lose my job. I can't do this. All this fear-based thinking that keeps you from going to your higher self or living in a space of thriving. So instead of joining a movement that can move you and the people forward, you stuck so much in survival mode that you think, I can't lose this job, as if there are no other opportunities in this world for you ever. If you stuck working 5 jobs, instead of positioning yourself to have one thing or maybe 2 things that you can do to give you satisfaction and stability, you are moving in a survival mode. If you are just functioning on your routines with little stability, you're just doing it because you've always done it, that is functioning in survival mode. And that fear-based thinking will keep you trapped there. Like the example I gave about knowing your job is terrible for you, knowing your job is physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually breaking you down because of your fear-based thinking and living in survival mode. You won't leave that job. You're so concerned about the what ifs that you can't even live and enjoy the abundance in your life because you're scared of what might happen, even if you do something that's good for yourself and your community, which is crazy. The next one we want to talk about is shame and guilt cycles. Religious and cultural shame are 2 big shames that we deal with. There was a point in time within shame and guilt cycles where if a young woman got pregnant as a teenager, it was religious norm to make that young woman stand in front of the church and apologize to the entire church in an effort to shame this young lady or that young woman, instead of supporting her, instead of getting to the root of what led her down that path, we think that shame will make her do it. Or using your religion as a leverage tool to make people feel less than is an example of a shame cycle that we use religiously. Then there's a guilt cycle. Then there's, excuse me, not guilt cycle, but cultural shame. You know, I think right now one of the better examples of cultural shame has been around this idea of the older generation versus younger generation. Right now, there's a new movement to call young black males YNs. Right. And there are all these cultural jokes making young black males look dangerous, predatory, no direction in a lot of different ways. And we call that humor instead of guiding and supporting and uplifting these young brothers who need mentorship, these young women who need guidance. We just label them YN and treat them as a cultural shame. And we lay the pathway for others to begin to attack our youth. Because we present them as a cultural shame. Another huge cultural shame that happens right now is towards black fatherhood. There are so many misrepresentations, that's the word that'll work, of what black fathers are. And let you believe it. And cultural shame is black fathers are absent. And we're still functioning under this idea, even though statistically and mathematically and family-wise, this is no longer true. I've even seen where people have argued against information and data that shows black fathers in a better light just to keep that cultural shame going, to make black men feel shame. We do it with our own women as well. All you gotta do is mention a bonnet and watch how quickly, a bonnet in public, and watch how quickly that cultural shame will be thrust upon those individuals. I remember I used to wear my do-rag. I still do, because I don't give a... I do care. I just know me wearing my do-rag isn't going to make that big of a difference for me. Right. The other aspect of shame and guilt cycles are guilt-driven parenting. That is essentially using guilt to get your child to behave in ways that you envision, which may be very, very, very different than what they want to do. It is your parents using guilt to get you to move in a line or move in a way that's in alignment with their vision of who you are, right? When your child makes a decision for themselves and it is not in alignment with what you envision for your child's life, how do you handle that? That guilt thing shows up very, very, very interestingly. And the way that it shows up the most is lack of support. When your child is trying to do something unique or different or special to them, and you're not there to support. You may be trapped in your own fear-based thinking. I see this happen a lot of times. Children play a football game at night. Parents work second shift. So they're never there to support their children in any of the afternoon activities. The child begins to feel guilty. They feel like they're functioning in a way that will not allow the parent to go to work. The parent is using guilt by telling them, I can't come because I gotta feed you, I gotta make sure these bills are paid. Just preaching fear-based thinking to your progeny, your seeds. Have you ever said to someone you love and care about, I just ain't gonna say nothing else? After you had a different viewpoint on what they should do with their own life. The example I gave before is one time my stepfather wanted to go see his family, and my mother didn't want him to go see his family. And she tried all her best arguments for him not to see his family. And in the end, he still wants to see his family. So the reply was, I'm just not going to say anything. Which is usually the first step for guilt treatment, silent treatment. Are you walking around showing people? Do you have a need for people to know that you disagree with the decisions that they made for themselves? Are you pressing guilt upon people? How was that guilt passed down to you? I told you my favorite is when we thought about the first time I really experienced guilt was around food. Are you on your kids about eating all the food? Do you say something to them about doing something so normal, so natural as eating? I remember my family used to hide food from us. That makes you feel guilty about eating. It gives you a very interesting perspective and relationship on food. Many of us struggle with food and diet because of the guilt we were given to us as children just for eating. Not routine, not healthy diet, just you shouldn't be eating. You always eating. As a matter of fact, one of our favorite movies, Friday, Pop say to his own son, how come every time I come in the kitchen, you in the kitchen? Eating up all the hog's maw. Eating up all the pig's feet. I want some pig's feet. Jealousy, envy, guilt. All in that. And we laugh about that because it resonates with us. Because we experience things like that. That is guilt-driven parenting. How do you want to interact with your children or your family in a way that they don't feel guilty for showing autonomy, right? Ooh, 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 ooh. Rolling. I'm crunk because we finally listened. That was the last one I had intended for on the first day that we did generational curses. Now we're on the second day. I told you I had like 25 of them. It's a new topic I definitely want to talk about too. And I think we'll do it after we finish this. Ooh. The next one we want to discuss is lack of boundaries. And there's a specific word that I'm actually going to look up. We're going to look up the definition together. It is a word that we want to use the context when we're thinking about lack of boundaries. Is enmeshment. Let's see what's cracking. And enmeshment is an over-involvement in each other's lives, leading to loss of autonomy, what we just talked about with parents and parenting at times. You get so involved, so many expectations for your own life and your own children, and that they no longer have autonomy for themselves. Enmeshment, where we at? Let's do this together, family. See, when I read this, when I was doing my studying, I had never, and which is crazy because I know a lot of books and a lot of words. Hey, dog whisper. It's the first time I actually get there. I don't be paying attention to Instagram at all. So, yeah, I appreciate you. Enmeshment. Let's see. Hey man, I want AI to tell us. I looked up on AI. AI gave us a great definition. Well, boom. Let's see what's cracking. All right, so specifically, enmeshment. This is one of those things where we probably talk about mama's boys, but mama's boys aren't the only ones. We see that a lot in. It's not gender specific. So we see it a lot in female to female relationships, male to male relationships, male to female relationships, any type of relationship that goes on as it relates to family and even outside of families. But it's specifically as we want to talk about this since we're thinking about generational curse. But it is overly intertwined. And this is it. Members may feel responsible for each other's emotions or behaviors, making it hard to maintain and separate a sense of self. This is one of the ones that specifically kind of stuck out with me because many of us are stuck in this. A lot of us, especially if you are in one of those places that you are responsible for someone else's well-being, not necessarily even just children. It can be adult parents. It can be a mate. You become so responsible for this person, it's hard to feel like who you are individually. I know for one, how it happened for me, especially if you have one of those, if you're a child of divorce, it really does happen. Or it happens for children of divorce. It happens a lot in single parent households. The child begins to feel responsible in part for the parent's emotions. That they don't even find ways to explore their own wants and needs. I use a perfect example of this. One of the reasons I always kind of stayed close to where I grew up is because I was very much conscious. Me and my mother used to have this conflict all the time where she'd be like, you need to go off and go find yourself, whatever that meant. People will tell you that all the time, but they never tell you, what does that mean? Go find yourself. So it'd be the blind leading the blind, right? And she never understood. Whenever she would say that to me, I'd just brush her off. Nah. And for the longest, she thought that I was just being stubborn, hard-headed, and there would be times where she'd make me feel guilty for not doing that. But the part of that she didn't understand is, for so long as a child, I was an emotional support for her. When my mother was angry, when she was sad, happy, glad, I was there. So I got an understanding that she could not navigate her emotions without me. So I just kind of stayed close. All the way up until she got a husband. Somebody else who can help her manage her own emotions, which many of us do not know how to manage our own emotions because we don't give ourselves permission to feel. Or when we feel the emotion, we double up on it. Or we get mad at ourselves for not feeling a certain way. Enmeshment creates difficulty with autonomy. What kind of conversations have you had with your family about what you want to do with your life? I remember for my family, it was just military, or you go to school and get you a job at the hospital. There are a million things that you can do out here. Those limiting beliefs make it difficult for you to create your own sense of autonomy. Woo. Perfect. How enmeshment happens, which is very important. Parent-child roles are blurred. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. It is the parentification. But I can think about, listen, I hear people say this now and it kind of makes me cringe because growing up, I used to say this. My old self took pride because I felt as though it was some sign of respect or appreciation. But when I was a little boy, my mama used to call me daddy. And I hear other little boys, I hear other parents refer to their children as mama or daddy. That is parent-child roles being blurred. I don't care what your child says, how old their soul is, how much they know. You are literally projecting onto your child and blurring their role. I got in a whole discussion with a friend not too long ago over driver's license and how it is okay for an 18-year-old person to not have a driver's license. The other way it winds up happening is family issues are avoided. How many of you got that person that's sitting in the back of the room that none of the kids can go play with? How many of you have talked about SA in your families? Or do you not? So now it's these weird blurred lines in your family where it looks like they're protecting the perpetrator and ousting the victims. That is a perfect example of enmeshment. And ultimately, what it does for you when you get older is it challenges you in forming healthy adult relationships. You will feel uncomfortable. You will even feel burdened by normal responsibilities of a family because you have carried them for so long. So now that you're creating your own family, you are burnt out. And because so many of us are sacral thinkers, we seek excessive closeness. We try to work out this enmeshment within our families through intimacy instead of through conversation, instead of through release. We're just going to ignore everything in this hope that this intimacy will disguise it. And that's if you're lucky. Because intimacy may not be a thing for your family. Yeah, I just wanted to look up enmeshment because that thing is huge to me. When I saw it, I did a little more research on it. The next one we want to talk about, hold on, where's enmeshment? Oh, it's the parentification. Kids taking on adult. That's the next one I want to talk about too. This is a lack of boundaries. The parentification. Kids taking on adult responsibilities too early, right? I remember I was watching Dr. Phil. I never remember this guy's name when I'm trying to talk about him, but I just seen this clip of Dr. Phil, right? And there was a mother on stage with her two daughters, and the father was somewhere because the parents got divorced. And the mother and her daughters were up there talking about how the dad hasn't been taking care of his responsibilities since the divorce, right? And then the daughter begins to talk about how she calls the father and talks about the light bill, the gas bill, the mortgage, and all these things. And when Dr. Phil asked her, why does she do that? And she's just like, well, I don't know. And the mother confidently stands there and says, well, I share everything with my children. You shouldn't. There are things that your child should not know. One of the reasons I grew so fast is because my people shared way too much with me. A lot of us wound up doing this adultification through latchkey. We love to talk about the latchkey experience. But all that is children were being robbed of their childhood. So now we have to go home and manage a home ourselves as children until another adult shows up. And depending on those work schedules, it could be the next morning. Right? How much responsibility have you taken over your siblings? I started working at 14. Why? Because I was taught a man that don't work, don't eat. But I was 14. I was not even close to being a man. There's so much developmental processes that take place between 14 and 25 that I couldn't even invest in what that means. Grow as a child into an adult because I was already behaving as an adult. And a lot of times we put these responsibilities on our children, or these responsibilities were put on us with the best intentions. They wanted us to be prepared for when we go out into this world. But that preparation started way too early. We will be adults for the rest of our lives. You will be an adult way longer than your opportunity to be a child. So for your own children, what do you want to do different? Do you think raising them includes giving them adult responsibility, talking to them about your bills? Or, no lie, this is one conversation me and my mama used to have all the time. Child support. I should not have known as a child what child support was, why my father isn't paying it or is paying it. I shouldn't know how much behind he is. I should know that shit. If you are in these situations and you're having these conversations with your child, you are committing adultification. You are essentially robbing your child of a childhood experience, right? Be mindful of that. The next one is gender role expectations. We might stop with gender role. We'll see. Gender role expectations is very interesting, and I think we talked about that a little bit. In the context, we want to look at it as men and women. Perfect example of this is men don't cry. So now we have generations of men who cannot be healed through their own tears. Through your own tears, you will be healed. Your tears, allowing yourself to release that emotion, is healing. But we've been socialized into a system that doesn't even allow us to cry. And if you do, it's frowned upon. Listen to how men talk about crying. Look how they've been socialized into think about crying. How has something so simple been weaponized against them? Then there's the idea that women sacrifice. That's a perfect example of a gender expectation. It's this idea that a woman's role is to sacrifice. And as we grow, we learn that both of these men don't cry and women's sacrifices are very, very, very limiting expectations of men and women. Because there are some women that don't cry and don't sacrifice. And there are some men that do cry and will sacrifice the world. As a matter of fact, this is a perfect example of limiting beliefs on these gender norms that has us confused. So in this healing, I talked to a lot of different people. And one time I had a friend of mine ask me, hey, have you ever heard or known of a man? Now they talking to a man, which is interesting. Have you ever heard are known of a man who would rather get to know a woman better before being intimate with them? And I say to them, I was like, yeah. If he values his body and he's looking for a certain type of dynamic, then yes. And as wild as it was, she just shrugged that off. Cognitive dissonance. She's y'all outliers. That's not the norm for men. That limiting belief didn't even allow her to believe that some men actually do have sexual discipline. She didn't even believe men had sexual discipline until a man showed her. She finally picked a man that actually had sexual discipline because of that limiting belief. The limiting belief that women are nurturers absolves men of their nurturing functions, which we do. These things that we've been taught that are gender specific aren't gender specific. They are skilled specific. Another way gender role expectations limit us is the jobs that we can do. I told you for my family, it was either military or you go be a doctor or something in the hospital. Those were manly jobs. Then here I go and go be an early childhood educator. I'm working with infants to 4-year-olds, a daycare teacher, a field predominantly women. And the amount of times that I'd walk up to someone and they would look at me with shock because they had limiting beliefs of genders and thought that that was a woman's job until they saw a man doing it. How many of us have been talked out of something that we would like to do because of limiting gender expectations? One of the benefits of being raised in a single mother home is some of those women genders, those women expectations are totally removed. There's an expectation that women must cook. In my household, that was flipped on its head because the men cooked. Me and my brother, we did a bunch of cooking. I cook so well now because of that flip of gender expectation. So are you limiting your own growth through limited gender expectations? Are you unable to behave in a way that's authentic to you because you are trying to function in your femininity? So much so that you are looking for men to function in their masculinity. Those are limiting gender expectations. If you need someone to take you out of your survival and move you into your thrival, that is a limiting expectation. For some reason, you don't think that you can do it. You think it is the role and responsibility of the opposite sex. You think femininity is the way to do it by denouncing your masculinity. But femininity and masculinity resides in both of us, in all of us. So these genderized limitations aren't even true. They are literally made up because masculine and feminine reside in both of us. As a matter of fact, right now, I'm working on a feminine aspect of myself. This is going to be some deep math, but stay with me. So I'm a Pisces, right? And the other day I was having a conversation with my homeboy, and he asked me, What's the opposite of Pisces? He's getting into this opposites attract. What's the opposite sign of Pisces? Right? And I always forget what it is. And he tells me it's Virgo. Then he goes a little deeper and does the math. Since I'm a Pisces, he was like, hey man, you've already mastered the functions of a male Pisces. I do. Because I am a male Pisces. He said, you've already mastered the functions of a female Pisces. The feminine side of myself. I've interacted with. My mother is a female Pisces. The person I was just said, the soul family Toddy, she's a female Pisces. I have very good relationships, long-term relationships. Sometimes we hit or miss with female Pisces, but I do feel confident that if I meet another Pisces, male or female, I'm going to interact fine with them. As long as they ain't no March Pisces. I'm joking. March Pisces, all right. So when we start thinking about the Virgo, he said, you've mastered the male Virgo too. So he started telling me some of our male Virgo friends. And he was like, you haven't mastered the female Virgo. And I thought about it. And it is. The shadow side of myself that I need to work on is the feminine side of Virgo. The gentleness, the understanding, the nurturing. All those are feminine attributes, but they reside in both male and female. So when you think about these gendered expectations, really take a pause and ask yourself, are you being fair? Are these expectations yours? Are these thoughts and ideas yours? I hear some. I'm not even going to talk about that. We're going to move on. Next one is silence around abuse and trauma. I don't know if I want to start that. I don't know if I want to end on abuse and trauma. Yeah, but we will. We kind of hinted to it several times. The next generational curse we want to think about is silence around abuse and trauma. How abuse and trauma has become normalized. One of the ways we wound up hearing this, I remember I've gotten a whooping, abuse and trauma, around this idea in the statement. What happens in this house stays in this house. That discourages people being forthright about their experiences because of the fear of somebody else finding out. We're putting a cap on the healing possibilities within our own families because we don't want to discuss it. The tough one is around this idea of healing. One of the things that put a little divide in my family is around this idea of whooping. I'm one of those people that don't believe in whipping children. I don't believe in physical violence to teach my child discipline and structure. There are a million ways to teach discipline and structure. Physical violence is just one. And I know by myself from those whoopings, they never taught the lesson that they were supposed to They taught me something else that I can't come to my parents. Even now when we have these discussions and I talk about, we talk about these whippings and I hear people, I see people all the time trying to cope with the trauma they endured by justifying it. They were taught to justify it. When I used to get my whoopings, I was told it was because of love. But then I got older and I learned love don't make you do that. There's something else that makes you physically harm a person. And it is not love. That trauma and that abuse is under the guise of love. But most of the time it's frustration, uncertainty. It's a bunch of things, but it's never love. How did your family address the issues that happened inside the house? In my family, physical violence was it. It was very acceptable for me to go out in the world and be violent, because in the family, not just in my immediate family, but in my family as a whole, physical violence was acceptable. I seen aunts beat up cousins, cousins beat up aunts. We attacked brothers and sisters in the street. This violence was okay. And not being able to discuss the true reasons why some of these things happen, they keep us boxed into an unhealed, keep us boxed into that living in survival. It doesn't allow us to even learn the skills to be able to be vulnerable. Because there's a huge amount of vulnerability that takes place in being able to speak about your experiences. And there's a huge amount of vulnerability that takes place in being able to sit and hear about someone's abuse and trauma. What are your family's thoughts on therapy? How many in your family have experienced something like that? Can you go through a list of family members who have done those things to help them speak and release the abuse and trauma they experienced? Or now are they passing this abuse and trauma down guised as advice? Oh, you don't want to do that. Why? And as you create your own new foundation with your family, how do you address abuse and trauma? Do you leave the space for children to be able to tell you, hey, I don't like when you put your hands on me? How is your response when children come to you and tell you something you didn't you did not expect? Do you need resources to help you be able to do this? Have you gone to therapy? Have you reached out to someone who's in holistic healing like myself? Have you done Reiki? Have you done spinal flow? Have you tried plant meds? Have you done some work to relieve yourself of your own abuse and trauma? Because most of us had to learn this process on our own. And please understand, as you go forward, This is why we are the soul family, because you are no longer alone. You can reach out to the family. You can reach out to me, and together we will address these things. We will figure it out together. That is a good perspective. So if you're not on, because it didn't show, Instagram comments don't show. But one of the comments said, in a 2-parent household, sometimes you don't have a choice because they start asking questions. Yeah, you still got a choice. You always have a choice. That is the illusion that does not get you to the core of why you do that. Because you can say, hey, don't worry about that. Or you can tell them to ask someone else. That's not a discussion you need to have with a child. But part of the problem that comes into place, where I recognize in my own family, what winds up happening is my mama ain't had no friends. She was so antisocial that making friends and maintaining friends was so difficult for her. My mama she had one best friend, but she has no, we lived in Charlotte since 1991. My mama has no friends. So her children became her friends. So she had inappropriate conversations with their children because she could not form good friendships. And she did not do the healing to be able to have these skills. She just told herself that she don't need it. She functioned in her survival. So when people say that, or when they feel like the child asks questions, because the kid is going to ask questions. They are curious. As a matter of fact, the safer they feel, the more questions and the more they press boundaries, because they know when they make a mistake, you're still going to love them. So they're going to ask questions. But one of the things that we're learning in this healing process is there is a such thing as timing. There is a time and a place for everything. There is a season to plant. There is a season to harvest. There is a season to burn the ground again so you can replenish the soil. So when that happens, it winds up being because we don't recognize the seasons, or we haven't addressed our own traumas that creates us with enmeshment because we have lack of boundaries. So all that is, when that winds up happening, will wind up happening. The reason why my mama would talk to me about everything is because she thought she had boundaries, but she didn't. And that's one of the reasons why she struggled to make friends, because deep down inside she recognized she had boundaries. She didn't have good boundaries. So it was easier for her to not be an active participant in her own life. It was easier for her to think of life as something that's happening to her instead of for her. And many of us function like that. We think that life is something that's happening to us instead of for us, because we haven't gotten to a space to acknowledge that our subconscious creates 90% of what's in our world. And that's not me acknowledging that it's not, that's not me saying that it's not difficult, because it's all difficult. These conversations we have here are difficult. Healing is difficult. Living is difficult. What did we say earlier? We need those challenges to experience success. So you'll never hear me say the word easy as it relates to this, because it's never easy. For many of us, we're blazing our own path. We'd have no roadmap for what we are doing because no one before us has done this. And they will have a tendency to try to talk us out of doing it, especially when we are looking for approval from those who are still living in their trauma. They're not going to understand what you are doing because they are holding on to their trauma. One of the things we want to talk about is soon is I forgot what it's called, but it winds up being this space of where your old self no longer exists. So now your new self seems lazy. So many people are afraid to let go because once they let go, they won't have anything. And not having anything is the perfect space for you to be there because you no longer want your ego to be functioning on that old blueprint, that old paradigm. So you seem like you lost a piece of motivation, but what it is you're in your cocoon. And a new foundation is being built that will motivate your ego. Your ego can no longer respond to those things. So in the difficulty, we still have to let go. And in that difficulty, we understand that we are going to a metamorphosis ourselves. And the old things that used to motivate us, the old traumas that will give us our responses, our direction, no longer are with us. So we have to create new tools to be able to do this. And the Spirit is doing that, right? So when you get to that space where you feel like there's no other option, I want you to always remember the strength that you have, where God resides. The temple of our Lord is within. So you'll understand that you have the ability to face the difficulties. I appreciate you saying that, because it's true. It is difficult. You know what I mean? But life is full of difficult choices. Again, family, I think we're going to wrap up right there with silence around abuse. We'll pick up next week. We got chronic victim mentality, the trust of authority, and there's a bunch of other ones. I got a couple more. So we'll probably wrap up next week with generational curses, at least naming them. Hopefully I get to see you on Thursday where, what are we reading? Okay, we started a new book. We are doing Lucretia and the Croons by Lavelle. I forgot. I won't call him Crawford, but it ain't Crawford because that's the comedian. I've been thinking about it. That's why I can't remember his name now. So Thursday, if you come on Thursday book club, that's just a day for you to be able to relax and get yourself calm. But we'll read Lucretia and the Croons. And if you can't make it Thursday, I hope to have you back here Tuesday, where we continue our discussion on generational curses and what we want to do a little differently, and some of the resources we may need to be able to do these things differently. And family, I appreciate your time as always. I appreciate you joining us to be able to help create an atmosphere of vulnerability, growth, and support. And I thank you for going with me on this journey. It's a tough one for us all. So, hope to see you Thursday. If not, I hope to see you next week. Oh man, I ain't cut the music off. Man, that's crazy. Rain and train been going that whole time. And has. Dog, was you supposed to tell me there's music playing in the background, train sounds and my bad, family. It happens. Anyway, I appreciate you. I hope you have a great rest of your evening. I value you, and please know that you are loved. Peace, family.